Hey, playa, do you find it hard to talk about yourself in a way that makes you sound interesting but doesn't bore the other person? Don't worry. In this video, I'm going to share 4 conversation tips that you could start using to help make your conversations more fun, exciting, and will help amplify whatever it is you want to share.
This is the Just Beats, you're watching the Just Beat.
My name is Josh, and every single week I make videos sharing tips, ideas, and stories teaching you how to be your best self. And when it comes to having conversations, the biggest fear that most people have is that the other person's not going to enjoy the thing that you're talking about. So even if it's something you're super passionate about, there's always that underlying fear of, does this person actually care? And you can nicely place that fear on top of the already existing fear of, do I have anything interesting to say? These are some of the biggest things that people tend to struggle with because they don't really know how to tell good stories. They don't know how to make the stories captivating and interesting, so I want to walk you through those tips now. The goal of telling any story is to hook that person's interest. So tip number 1 is to focus on the emotional parts of the story and tell them as if they're happening right now. Here's an example. When I was younger, I actually fell into an open grave at a cemetery. It's a long story, check out the video over here. But if I were to tell that story now, I would probably really heighten the emotional parts of it. Me falling, me not knowing what's going on. Maybe instead of saying I was really scared then, I would just kind of look around and express the fact that I was scared as I'm telling the story so that the person listening can feel the emotion that I felt in that moment. Also, you're going to want to make sure to be super descriptive. So I might tell people, I was a little kid, I was about this tall, and that grave looked like it was miles and miles above me. I just looked up and was terrified. The more animated you can get, the more emotional that story will feel, and that person will really jump on that roller coaster of emotions that you're experiencing as you're telling it. Tip number 2 is to give space for the person listening to offer their own emotional responses. As you're telling that story, try to listen and see how they're feeling in that moment. They may say things like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened," or "Wow, weren't you incredibly scared?" Those are opportunities to really connect with how they are feeling emotionally, which is going to draw them in closer. Remember, when it comes to being an interesting storyteller, it's not just you relaying the story to them. You want to be interactive. You want to get their feedback. So if they have something to say or they're just sharing their feelings, stop what you're doing and bring that into the story. Acknowledge it so that they feel like they want to hear the next part. Plus, there's got to be a level of enthusiasm when you talk. A lot of times people feel kind of ashamed or embarrassed if what they're talking about isn't all that interesting, but you can make whatever it is you're talking about sound more interesting by caring about that topic. So you got to go in more confident in what you're sharing. Stop doubting yourself, stop beating yourself up. This is an interesting thing to tell that person. Tip number 3 is probably my favorite here, and that's to use cliffhangers during the story and build suspense with pausing. Cliffhangers are great because they always leave the person wondering what happened next. For example, I went out once with my brother and a bunch of people and met this girl amongst her group of friends, pulled her aside, and as I was talking to her, telling her a story, a psychological test called the cube, before I actually explained what the cube was, I ended the story and said, "Hey, look, I gotta go, but let me get your number and I'll text you the rest of the story." She gave me her number so incredibly fast because she really wanted to know what the cube was. What did it mean? What did it represent? And because I kind of ended it on a cliffhanger where I didn't explain to her that night, I knew that we were going to have a part 2 to that conversation just because she really wanted to know. But let's say you wanted to add suspense in the current conversation you're having. Well, pausing will help you do that trick. For example, if I were telling you the story about how there was a ghost in my house that would always scratch my back, if I were to tell you that I woke up one night and then all of a sudden I saw this figure and it was the ghost. See how I kind of paused in between each part and added more suspense to telling you that it was the ghost? That's how pausing can really help your storytelling move up a notch. Now, if you do it too much, it can actually hurt the story because the person's going to feel like they're just waiting more than they actually have to. So you want to make sure to include it at the right moments, the most suspenseful and highest points of the story where you really are going to hook them in. Tip number 4 here is essential. Make sure to bring the conversation back to the person you're talking to and ask them about their own similar experiences. A good storyteller isn't just the person who's talking all the time. They're the person who's asking questions, who's trying to understand if this matters to you and if you've had similar things to deal with. For example, if you're telling a story about a crazy ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend that you had, or dealing with someone that was insecure or jealous or anything of that nature, ask them about their own experiences. Have they ever had a friend that was like that, or been in a relationship, or have they ever dealt with something like that before? Turning it around and getting them now to share with you is going to help you guys grow closer together. Plus, it's going to show them that you actually have a genuine interest in who they are and what their experience has been like. Most people completely miss this opportunity because they spend the whole time talking about themselves and never really give that other person the chance to share, to open up, to talk about what matters to them. So if you want to be a good storyteller, you first need to work on being a good listener. I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons, YouTube channel members. These are the people that help the channel grow. So if you want to learn how you could talk to me one-on-one every single month, check out the link to Patreon down below. Now what I want you to do is check out the video over there on the side where I'm going to go more in depth on how to be interesting and how to stand out when you're talking to someone that you like. Also, I'm going to link up a playlist of my life stories. This is how I tell stories and some of the things I've gone through in my own life that I want to share with you. So check out those links and I'll catch you next time. As always, love and peace.